Okay, good morning everybody. Nice to meet you all. My name is Liran Baba from IT Navigator. And during the next 90 minutes, we'll go about and do a deep dive technical session on the following components within the ACCCM platform. We're going to discuss about the ACCCM license tracker application. We're going to discuss about the new features or the new enhancements to the license tracker platform in Release 7. And we're going to show you guys the new ability to go about and use or leverage the control sphere environment in order to pull up information from CMS or IQ. Just a quick word before we start. So my name is Liran Baba from the Professional Services and Operation team within IT Navigator. I'm in charge of all the IT Nav ACCCM trainings. And as Omer mentioned earlier during this call, by the end of this session, you can go about and download this PowerPoint presentation from the ACCCM Wikipedia website. So, let's start with the central license tracker feature within Control Manager. Starting from release 6.3, I believe, we've introduced the license tracker. The license tracker environment provides a centralized view to track down your firm license usage, including historical tracking across any integrated system with ACCCM. Further on, you can actually go about and track, using the license tracker, you can track the license usage of Avaya products that are not licensed in your ACCCM environment. For example, if your ACCCM instance includes a license for Communication Manager and a voice portal integration, you can still go about and configure an AES or a CMS or an IQ system within the license tracking environment in order to track down the license usage. So even products that are outside of your license scope of your ACCCM instance can still go about and be configured for tracking within the ACCCM platform. A new integration or a new feature in Release 7, we basically tie down the new notification server into the license tracker environment, which basically gives you the ability to receive email notifications and SNMP alerts about license capacity. For example, you can go about and configure a new threshold or a new rule stating every time that I'm exceeding 90% of my advanced TSAPI licenses on my AES, I want to be notified about it via an email message, for example. So every time your license capacity in your AES box will exceed 90%, the administrators in the environment will go about and receive an email notification about it. Of course, ACCCM fully supports the concept of tenant-based license assignment, where basically each location can be assigned to its own product, and if it's a multi-location or a service provider environment, we can go about and assign different products to different locations, allowing the administrators to track down the usage of their environment only. Within the Control Manager or ACCCM platform, in order to go about and configure the license tracker, just like we're configuring any other product, we'll go about and navigate to the CFG, the Config tab. And under the Config tab, we'll locate the License Tracker Mini tab. And here we can go about and choose basically any product that is supported by ACCCM. In this example, we're tracking down a Communication Manager-based license. Now, please keep in mind, we do have two types of an integration into the license environment. The first one and the more common one would be an integration to the WebLM of the relevant product. For example, if we're going to go about and track down an AES, we'll have to go about and configure the WebLM URL, including an administrative user for the WebLM itself. This is valid for all products with the exceptions of two. For Communication Manager, there's no need to go about and configure your WebLM URL and user and password. You just need to choose the Communication Manager that you've previously configured under the Config tab and the CM tab. Same goes for CMS. if you want to go about and track down the license usage in a CMS system, we're going to go about and choose the CMS that we've previously configured in ACCCM. As we all know, the CMS system, at least up until release 17, does not support a WebLM. So what we're doing in the ACCCM license tracker environment, we're tracking down the license usage either via WebLM direct integration or a direct connection to the WebLM platform, or via a direct integration to the server itself. For example, in the CMS system, once we go about and fetch the license usage for any given interval, we're going to basically log into the Solaris box and execute the relevant command that will show us the license usage at the moment. We need to remember two items or two certain parameters when we go about and configure the license tracker. The first one would be would affect our database size. The tracking history parameter right here would determine how many days do I want to go about and save the results in my database. Now, as you all know by now, ACCCM maintains a relatively small database. As I mentioned in previous sessions, I think that the biggest ACCCM database that I ever saw was around, I think, 12 or 13 gigs. But keep in mind that if you go about and choose to store the history of your traffic reports in the database for, I don't know, 100 days as an example, your database size will grow accordingly. To make sure what would be the best value or for our environment to use the tracking history interval, I would refer you guys to the Wikipedia page. We can go about and use the database sizing tool in order to calculate the necessary hard drive size for our database if we want to use the license tracker feature. And one of the parameters within the database sizing tool that you can find in the ACCCM Wikipedia site would be the number of days for historical reporting. So based on the number that you're going to input, the database size may vary, if I'm going to save it only for 10 days or if I'm going to save it for the entire year. So we need to make sure to go about and choose the relevant or input the relevant number under tracking history in order to make sure that our database size will maintain a reasonable size. The enable checkbox right here will determine whether we want to enable or disable the tracking for this specific product. And in this list right here, you can go about and see all the relevant supported products for the license tracker environment. I won't go over all of them, but we can find, of course, all the most common or popular one for communication manager, for modular messaging, for an AES system, application enablement services, voice portal, experience portal, and so on. Right here we can see the license tracker portal. Now this is a relatively old screenshot that was taken from a previous release. In the new version or in release 7 you would notice two extra tabs under the license tracker portal. One would be occupancy measurements and one would be trunk traffic reports. And we'll touch base or refer back to these two later on today. So once you log into the license tracker, the first thing that you will see is the settings tab. And under the settings tab, you can go about and determine which tab would be the default tab once you log in. You would say, for example, hey, I want to see the dashboard, which is the real-time representation of the license tracker feature by default every time I log in, or I want to see the historical tab by default every time I'm logging in to the ACCCM license tracker. Under the settings tab, I can also configure the refresh rate, which means what would be the interval that the GUI, the graphical user interface, will go about and refresh the data or basically read again from the database for the most up-to-date license capacity. We'll take a look later on today. Where are these parameters stored within the database itself? On which tables would be relevant for real-time and historical reporting? We can go about and choose a relevant system. In this example, we're looking at a CM or communication manager system. And if we would like to, we can go about and even choose by clicking on these checkboxes right here, different licenses to compare between them. And as soon as I go about and choose these licenses, the graphs right here will change and represent the license usage based on my selection. This right here would be the historical tab where we can go about and run historical reports. In this case, we're running a historical report on a peak license usage. And we're choosing the following licenses: dynamic use slots per system, DS1 with echo cancellations, ICHT for ISDN and SIP trunks, and H323 trunks, including the trunk ports. As soon as I go about and click on Run Report, the system will generate the following, and this would give me an indication per day on the license usage on each and every one of the license features that I've selected on the available license screen. And if I want to, I can go about and hit the Export to CSV file in order to export this report into a CSV format. So later on I can print it out or share it with other resources on my organization. Occupancy measurements. This is a new addition to Release 7. So up until Release 7, once you log into License Tracker, you would see the Settings, Dashboard, and Historical tab. These new two tabs were introduced in Release 7, and both are affecting or related to the Communication Manager. The first one would be the occupancy measurements. Under occupancy measurements, basically I can go about and view the occupancy measurements on my switch, on my pre-configured switch. And in here I can take a look and I can see that, for example, on midnight, I got a static occupancy of 3. My CPU occupancy was on 0, and total calls were on 0. Of course, I can always go about and export this data into a CSV file to share with other resources on my organization. So the occupancy measurements will actually go about, and what we're doing in the back end from a technical perspective, we're actually going about and logging into the switch any given interval and performing the list measurement commands in order to receive the output of the occupancy measurements. We're then going to parse that information that we're receiving back to from the switch, and we're going to place it in the ACCCM database. As long as I have permissions to log into the license service portal, and as long that this communication manager is assigned to my location, I would be able to go about and view the occupancy measurements. And of course, if we tie this into the new notification server in Release 7, you can actually configure a notification, whether it's an SNMP or an SMTP notification, that will be sent to the administrators in the environment every time that the occupancy measurements reaches a certain pre-configured threshold. Trunk measurements will actually go about and track down the trunk usage in your environment. From a technical perspective, the way it works, the synchronization service, or the synchronization application, to be more accurate, once you go about and install ACCCM and start the initial synchronization process, you would notice that there is a new object in Release 7 that is supported from the synchronization mechanism. That object would be trunks. So if you choose to go about and synchronize the trunks from your communication manager, ACCCM will then go about and perform a list command on your switch to list all the relevant trunks. It will then go about and save this information into the ACCCM database, where then you can go about and choose your CM from the ACCCM UI, and there you can say, I want to track down from, I got 10 trunks in my environment, and I want to go about and track the following 5. A very important note I would like to stress out in this point: if you would like to leverage the trunk measurements feature within ACCCM, we need to make sure that the relevant trunks that we want to monitor would be enabled for measurements on the switch itself. On the switch itself, when you do a change or a display trunk command, one of the parameters would be whether this trunk is going to be measured. If we would like to go about and leverage or use the ACCCM trunk measurement feature, we need to enable internal, at the very least, an internal measurement on my trunks. So we can either go with internal or both, means external and internal, but at least one of these needs to be configured in the trunk itself, so ACCCM will have the ability to go about and run down a report on the trunk usage itself. So remember, if we want to go about and configure trunks in our environment, the first thing we want to make sure is those trunks are really measured on the switch itself. And here we can see I can go about and choose a relevant system or a relevant communication manager. In this case, we're using our production communication manager. And here we can see all the relevant trunks that are currently configured. And we're choosing the ACCCM trunk, and I can see the following. And if I'll choose, like in this screenshot, we've chosen 3 different parameters. We can go about and see them right here on the graph representation that will show me the usage of these 3 features, the group size, the queue size, and the percentage of ATB under my ASM trunk. So this in regards to the trunk measurement feature in ACCCM, and again, we want to make sure to do the following prior of using this feature. The first thing, we want to make sure that the trunk on the switch itself is set for measurements. The second thing we want to do is to synchronize the environment with the initial synchronization and make sure we're going to choose to synchronize trunks. And once we do that, we can go about into the ACCCM platform, locate our communication manager, and choose what trunks are going to be monitored by the license tracker feature. And in a few minutes, we'll go about and do a live demo on my lab server, and we'll take a look where to locate these parameters. So, license tracker in release 7 was enhanced to support traffic trunk tracking on the communication manager. The new feature supports the following functionality: track occupancy measurements and trunk measurements across the entire environment. The tracking is done on an hourly basis, and the historical data is stored on the ACCCM database based on the number of history days that we've configured under the license tracker environment. The way ACCCM works from a technical perspective regarding the new traffic reports in Release 7, we got our traffic CM connector right here. The license tracker will go about and send or trigger the CM connector to connect into the communication manager on our given interval. The CM connector will then basically execute several commands, for example, list occupancy measurements or list trunk traffic with the relevant trunk number. It will then take the output, parse it, and the ACCCM license tracker will go about and save this information into the ACCCM database under the relevant license tracker tables that we'll see later on today. Based on the numbers of history that I've pre-configured, basically the system will do a FIFO action, first in, first out, and as soon as I reach my threshold, in, for example, if I've configured 10 days, as soon as I reach my threshold, the oldest data will be removed from the database, and we're going to insert new records to represent today. This is the output of the command that is being issued from the ACCCM platform to the communication manager. The first one right here would be an example of the list measurement trunk group hourly, and we're stating trunk number 1. And here we can see the measurement of the trunk itself. And again, this is the exact same output that you guys would see on the ACCCM license tracker environment. You would see a GUI representation of this data, and you'll see a table with the following columns: the measurement hour, total usage, maintenance usage, and so on. And the second command, right here at the bottom, will be the actual command that ACCCM is issuing into the communication manager in order to track down the occupancy measurements on the switch, which is basically list measurements occupancy of the last hour. So as you can see from this command, this will be run on an hourly basis from ACCCM to the switch itself. So as I mentioned earlier, the first thing that we want to do we want to go about and make sure on the switch itself that the trunks are measured. So if I'll go about and do display trunk 1 on my switch, one of the parameters I need to look at is the measured, and if it's set to either internal or both, we can go about and use this feature. Then when configuring our communication manager, for those of you who are not quite familiar with Control Manager, this screenshot was taken from the communication manager configuration page. And you would notice that in release 7, you got these two at the bottom, which are new parameters, whether we want to track the traffic and what would be the history length in days. So currently this one is enabled for tracked traffic, and the history is only 1 day. And again, based on the number, and I really cannot stress this one enough, based on the number that you can configure in here, your database size would vary. So I would make sure to use the ACCCM database sizing tool prior of configuring the license tracker environment, just to make sure that I'm going to be on the safe side regarding my database itself. Keep in mind, ACCCM, if we're going to install ACCCM on a single server environment, basically what will happen, you would install all system components on a physical or a virtual server. Within the default installation, ACCCM would allow you to install a local Microsoft SQL Server Express instance. The Express version of SQL Server is free of charge. There is no license required in order to use that database backend. However, one of the limitations of using an Express database is the database size. The maximum database catalog size within SQL Server Express would be a maximum of 10 gigabytes. So if we're going to exceed 10 gigabytes, we just can't leverage the Express version of it. So due to the database limitations on the Express version, again, 10 gigs of data, we want to make sure prior of configuring license tracker that we're good in our database sizing using the database sizing tool of ACCCM. Once we've configured this and we've used the synchronizer application in order to do an initial synchronization of the trunks, because again, what will happen basically, the synchronizer will go to the switch, perform a list trunk command, take the output and save it into the ACCCM database. Only then we can go about and choose which trunks we want to go about and monitor. If we want to do that, what we'll do, we'll go about, we'll check the checkbox right here in order to choose our communication manager. And then we'll use the following button right here, the little waves icon. If I go about and choose this or click on this icon, what will happen is the system will prompt with a new window. And as a side note, I would highly recommend to enable pop-up messages from the ACCCM URL or websites, as from time to time the system will go about and pop up or prompt me with a new window. So we want to make sure to enable pop-up messages from the ACCCM URL. And once I'll click on the waves icon right here, the system will pop up a new window and I can see the trunks in my environment, and then I will be able to choose which one of the trunks I want to monitor within the ACCCM license tracker application. And again, we'll take a look at that later on during this session when we do the live demo. And this is the trunk selection screen. And again, this trunk came from this information came directly from the communication manager itself. And here I can see I got 6 trunks, and at the moment, all of them are configured for tracking. You can see the name, the trunk access code, the group type, and the name. And also, I can see the number of members within my trunk itself. For historical reports, we've modified the following in Release 7 to include the historical types of license, occupancy, and trunk. So if I'll go about and choose license under the historical tab in the license tracker environment, if I'll choose the report type of license, it would affect the, or it will display for me the relevant license usage based on my database entries. If I was to choose occupancy, the system will go about and run an historical reports on the occupancy measurements that were saved in my communication manager. And if I choose trunks, it will go about and run historical reports on my trunk's usage selection. And of course, all of the reports in ACCCM, whether it's an out-of-the-box report or whether it's a customized report, all of these can go about and be exported to a CSV file so we can share it with other resources in our organization. Now, in this part, we're going to discuss about the notification engine, and again, this is a new enhancement to Release 7. The notification engine in Release 7 was a part of our new centralized logging and notification capabilities. And what we did in Release 7, we've basically changed the way the system works from a logging perspective or a notification perspective. We got two new services, the notification server and the log server. Each one of the ACCCM web portals and the ACCCM system services will go about and report against two queues within ACCCM. The first queue would be the log queue, and all logging messages would go about and report to that queue. The second queue would be notifications queue. All system services and web portals will report and will send a notification alert about the status of the service, whether the service is started or stopped, and what the exact reason for a failure, for example. So we got two queues sitting on a web server, and one would be the queues, one would be the notification queue, and the other would be the logs queue. The new ACCCM log service would be the consumer from that log queue and would read all the messages in that queue and save them into the database. The notification service is the consumer of the notification queue, and the notification service is responsible of fetching the data from the notification queue and saving it into the ACCCM DB. However, the notification service also kicks in if we want to go about and leverage the notification capabilities in ACCCM, which means if I'll go about and choose to send an email or SNMP notification every time that my license usage on the AES exceeded 90%, or every time that my trunks on trunk number 1 exceeded a, 98 capacity, the notification engine itself, the ACCCM notification engine, would be the component that is responsible of fetching the data from the database regarding your threshold, process the information, and then go about and send either an SNMP or an SMTP message to a configured account regarding the results. In this case, or in this example, we've configured the notification engine to send out email notification every time we're exceeding a 5,000 TSAP licenses. The license tracking environment is talking constantly with our AES server regarding the current license usage, and every time we're seeing that we're hitting that threshold of 5,000 TSAP basic licenses, the notification engine would be responsible to send the notification either by an email message or an SNMP to the relevant resource regarding this threshold. So, as I mentioned earlier today, the notification server in Release 7 supports email notifications, SNMP notifications, again, that are generated by the license tracker itself, and also SNMP messages that are generated by ACCCM services, but this is out of the scope for today's session. Again, from our perspective, or in regards to the license tracker environment, the notification service is responsible to send out the email and SNMP notifications. Of course, that if the notification service is down for any reason, ACCCM will not be able to send out SNMP messages regarding the license or traffic usage. So as a best practice, we would highly recommend to go about and monitor all of the ACCCM system services, and we want to make sure that all of the ACCCM system services are up and running. And as a side note, as an off-topic side note, in Release 7, we also introduced the SNMP, the ACCCM SNMP agent. So you can actually configure your MIB browser on your own PC to track down SNMP traps and alerts from the ACCCM server, leveraging the new SNMP agent of Avaya Contact Center Control Manager. And in future releases such as 7.1 or in release 7.2, we're going to enhance the infrastructure of our notification service to include basically any kind of customized notification based on any administrative task that you perform in ACCCM. So in next releases or future releases, what we're actually going to do, we will allow the end user or the administrator in the environment to receive a notification for every managed action, whether we're talking about changing an agent's skills, busy out an extension, or changing a VDN vector assignment. So everything that you can do in the ACCCM UI would be embedded into the notification engine in future releases in order to support notifications for every managed task. This is the architecture of the ACCCM notification server or engine. As I've mentioned earlier, in release 7, all of the ACCCM system services will go about and report to a centralized queue about their status. The consumer of the messages in this queue would be the ACCCM notification engine. The notification engine will fetch the data from the queue, save it into the database, and based on my threshold definitions, will go about and send an email or an SNMP message. This is where we'll go about and configure notifications, and we can find it under the License Tracker tab when we go about and configuring products that we're going to monitor. And for every product, we can choose to go about and send notifications. In this case, we're choosing to send an email notification for a license usage threshold. Right, so up until now we discussed about the license tracker enhancements in release 7 and what's new with the notification engine as well, which is tied into the license tracker environment. Now I'm just going to have a few quick words about the Sphere, the control sphere enhancements in release 7, which will basically allow you to go about and index results not only from the ACCCM and the communication manager, but also from reporting systems such as CMS and IQ. So just a few quick words regarding control sphere before we even start. For those of you who are not familiar with the contact center control manager control sphere, and I know we do have too many C's in that name. So under the control sphere, we'll go about and basically search for every given item in my environment. What's happening in the backend, ACCCM Sphere environment, is going to take down all of the objects in your environment, for example, I don't know, a VDN, and we'll break down that object into different types. For example, it will take the VDN and it will break it down to the VDN class of restriction, the VDN skill assignment, the VDN variable assignment, the VDN vector assignment. It will break this object down to all of these small objects, and it will place them within the ACCCM database and index those results. Once you log into the ACCCM Sphere web portal, you would see a very clean and slim UI, very similar to the Google UI as an example, just a blank page with a search field. Now, when you go about and search under the Avaya tab, for example, for, I don't know, VDN support, the system would go about and search for all the intralinked objects that are related to that VDN. For example, the system would show me the VDN itself. It would show me the policy routing table if there's a policy routing table assigned to that VDN. It will show me the vector if there's a vector assigned to that VDN, the skill assignment, and so on. And the best usage of it, think about it, for a non-technical user, for example, a business manager that would like to close down his, I don't know, sales contact center at, I don't know, 7 p.m. today instead of 9 p.m. That business user don't know that in order to do that, he needs to change a holiday table or to change the service hour table or to change a vector. So the user would go about and log into the Sphere environment, would search for, I don't know, close sales, and the system would prompt him with all the relevant items that are related to his search, the VDN for sales, the service hour that is assigned to the vector that is assigned to our sales VDN. And then the business user, again, with no technical knowledge or any Avaya expertise would be able to go about and close down his contact center using, as an example, the ACCCM visual vector environment. So this is the control sphere again, and we've introduced control sphere back in release 6.3. And in release 7, what we've decided to enhance the sphere capabilities to affect not only the ACCCM environment, but also the reporting environment, whether it's a CMS or an IQ reporting system. So the data fetcher, the component within ACCCM that is responsible to fetch and index the data, was enhanced, and now it includes libraries to support an Informix integration for the CMS database. The CMS is using an Informix database in the back end, and for an Oracle database for the IQ itself. The IQ leveraged an Oracle database server for its database backend. The Sphere indexing feeder using an ACCCM, IQ, and CMS indexing scenarios that are passed throughout our Solar engine, which is our indexing engine, which perform the indexing by leveraging the contact center specific algorithm deployed within Control Sphere. The UI calls that indexing feeder itself and passes a free text that the user enter. Again, when we're searching for closed sales in the backend, the system knows that close can be affecting a vector, a VDN, or a service hour table. So the system with the backend will go about and search for these items within the Sphere indexing tables. The dictionary holds a translation between the user request and the ACCCM admin action. So in the backend, we're basically managing a dictionary that will translate between a business language to a technical language. And again, not all business users are familiar with Avaya, and not all business users understand the term vector or the term service hour table. So what we did, we tried to simplify the technical terminology that we're using in the environment and bringing it facing more towards the business user or non-technical users that will go about and leverage the Sphere environment to perform daily administration tasks. So the new addition in release 7 is going to go about and search for an information using a specific syntax into the Informix database and the IQ environment. The dictionary is mapping between any text command, any text itself, to a specific command. For example, a change command can be also a modify command, or an edit command, or an update. So if you go about and issue an update within Control Sphere, in the backend, the system will translate that update into a change command in Avaya, because again, not all business users know that the technical term or the specific command that needs to be issued is a change. So our dictionary includes a quite extensive translation between common language and a technical term or a technical command we're going to issue into the communication manager or the CMS itself. The dictionary is provided out of the box with predefined set of words, and unfortunately in the current build it cannot be updated by the customer itself. However, if your customer feels like he needs to go about and update the dictionary translation to suit his environment most, you're more than welcome to contact IT Navigator professional services or support personnel, and we'll go about and do the necessary change in order to support the translation for that specific customer environment. So once I go in within Sphere itself, and this is the Sphere UI, this screenshot was taken from the ACCCM Sphere in UI. And as you can see in here, we got 4 relatively clean, just one search field right here. At the top of the page, we can find 4 tabs, and this is, 5 tabs, and this is fully configurable. The first one would be ACCCM. This would be, I would like to refer to it as a quick link access to specific ACCCM tabs. For example, if I go about and click on ACCCM right here, I would see a drop-down selection, and all of the ACCCM common tabs, whether it's the Avaya tab, Users tab, or Visual Vectoring tab, would be displayed there, and I can click on one, and the system will redirect me to the relevant object within the ACCCM world. If I choose the Avaya tab right here, the system would allow me to search for any specific object, regardless of the language. Again, whether it's a technical language or whether it's a day-to-day business language. And as soon as I go about and hit search, the system will go about and fetch or search within the indexing tables within the ACCCM environment for my object. The Analytics tab, and this is a new addition to Release 7, the Analytics tab is the representation of our CMS and IQ indexing environment. So if I would like to search for specific information that sits on the CMS server itself, for example, if I was to search for the ACW time of an agent Liran during the last 30 days, the system will actually, in the back end, will go about, initiate a connection to the Informix database, and using a certain syntax, will search for the information that I've inputted. What would be the total ACD time for the last 30 days for agent Liran? It will then format the results and provide them on screen. And in the next or in future releases of Control Manager, you will actually have a drill down capability. If you guys will have a CMS with the CMS web reports installed, the system would actually give you the actual link to that CMS report itself. So from the ACCCM Sphere environment, you would search for a specific agent or a specific VDN report. You would see the information on screen, and if you go about and click on that report, if you guys are using CMS web reports, the system will redirect you to the relevant report using your own username and password. And this feature would be available in next releases of ACCCM combined with the CMS web report feature. So if I go about and search for an extension named Steve, and I hit enter, the system would show me the following input, and this would be my extension itself, and I can see my extension right here. And if I choose to click on it, the system again would redirect me to the extension page, and there I can go about and edit, and of course based on my security level, I would be able to go about and edit the relevant object. So just to summarize things regarding Sphere, in Release 7, we've enhanced the Control Sphere indexing capabilities, and these are now included libraries for the CMS Informix database and the IQ Oracle database backend. All right, this screenshot right here will give us a good example of how to use the Analytics tab in regards to a report. And in this case, we were looking for top routing points yesterday, and the system will give us the following information, and this information comes directly from either the CMS, or based on this query, I would assume this would be the IQ rather than the CMS, and this information comes directly from the Oracle database of the IQ itself. So this is huge, guys, and I'm really excited about this new feature because it will basically eliminate the need to go about and browse or log into other products or other interfaces in order to pull down report information. You can now go about and do that directly from ACCCM, of course, as long as you have the necessary permissions to go about and do so. All right, so now we can start with the fun part, which is the actual hands-on demo itself. This is my lab server, one of my lab servers. I've configured this with a license tracker environment for a communication manager and an AES server. And let's take a look how to go about and configure it, how to use the license tracker, including the new license features, which is the occupancy measurement and trunk measurements, how to configure a notification, and how to leverage the analytics feature within the ACCCM Control Sphere.